this challenge, I'll create a few piano keys as duplicate sprites. Then I'll create the piano keys as clone sprites. Hopefully it'll be easier to see how having one sprite with all of its scripts shared by all of the sprites is easier to use and maintain. First I want a backdrop. I'll go to Upload Backdrop from File. I'll double click on my backdrop. I have the backdrop I wanted now. This is a picture from the manuscript Beethoven created for a sonata commonly known as the Moonlight Sonata. I really like this manuscript because it shows messy mistakes and changes. Creating software is just as messy and has even more changes. If you get frustrated with problems and changes, remember this image of Beethoven's changes creating a famous song. You're going to have problems making many changes too. Don't give up. It's what you have at the end that matters. If Beethoven had given up, we wouldn't have this Moonlight Sonata or hundreds of other compositions he created. To make my composition, I'll first delete the cat. Delete. I'll need a sprite. I'll go to Things, Button 3. I'm going to use it for a piano key. I want it to point in a different direction. I'll select down, see what that looks like. That looks good. Get it in the center a little bit more. I want to set the direction when the program starts, when a green flag is clicked. I want it to play a note when I click on the key. When this sprite clicked, I'll go to Sound, play a note. I'll change beats to 1 full beat. It'd be good if I set the tempo. I'll get Set Tempo, put that in the initialization. The tempo will be 60 beats per minute. When the note is played, 60 beats per minute is 1 full second, so the note will play for 1 full second. That's the length of 1 beat. I'll try the program. Green flag, click on the key, plays a note. Would be nice if the key changed when I clicked on it. I'll go to Costumes. There are 2 keys. You can use this for when it's clicked on, then back to this when it's not. Costume A is the default and B is when it's been pressed. I'll go back to Scripts. I'll go to Looks. I'll try Next Costume. When I click on Next Costume, it changes to the next costume and went from 1 to 2. 2 is the last one, so when I click on Next Costume, it goes back to 1. I'll try using this. Duplicate, add it to the beginning. Now when the sprite is clicked on, the costume will change to being look like it's pressed, play the note. When the note is finished playing, it'll change the costume back. I'll give this a try, make sure it's stopped, green flag. Click on it. That works nicely. See it highlighted. One more time. That seems to be working nicely, but if I click on it again quickly, what would happen? I'll try it. It cut the first note short, and my costume is wrong now. It's still showing the keys being pressed when it's not. Here's our version of some messy problems and some changes we're going to have to make to our code. When I click on it quickly, the play note gets interrupted. It doesn't get a chance to finish this handler and change the costume back. It's as if when it's interrupted, that's the end of it. Then new call changes the costume, plays the note, wait, changes it back. I only end up with 3 change costumes, so I'm left with the wrong costume. Seems like a big problem. Is there a solution to this? Instead of using Next Costume, I'll switch costumes. When I click on the key, I'll switch to the costume 3B. When I'm finished playing the note, I'll switch back to 3A. If the play note is interrupted and a new handler is called, that's okay. The new handler will change the key and then change it back. I'll get rid of the Next Costumes. I'll use Switch. Switch it to 3B, then back to 3A when it's finished. One thing I should do is initialize the key. Easy to do. Initialize the key to 3A. Start over. Now I've got the right key at initialization. I'll click on it. Changed, played, changed it back. I'll click on it quickly. That worked right. I'll do it again. That's working nicely. Unlike Beethoven, having to leave messy little changes around, my changes are nice and neat, as if there wasn't a problem. First I'll try making piano keys by copying this sprite. It's playing 60, which is a middle C. I'll change the name. I'll call it C60. I'll duplicate it. Move it next to the other sprite. Now I have two piano keys. I'll change its name to D62. I have the script for D62. I'll change its note to D. Notice that both sprites set their own tempo. I copied this. I'll take a look at help on set tempo, which says that it sets the sprite's tempo. The tempo is not shared across all the sprites. Each sprite has its own tempo. This should work nicely. I'll give it a try. C, D. Copy one more time. Duplicate. I should stop it. Set it next to the D key. I'll make it an E. Change it. E64. I'll change its name too. E64. I'll try it now. Stop. Run. That's working nicely. I'll stop it. I have only 3 sprites now. I could duplicate more, and if this is all I needed, this could be good enough. But what if I wanted to make this program do more, like play notes of different lengths, instead of always playing one full beat duration of time? This code wouldn't be quite so trivial anymore. It would start making problems having 1, 2, or 3 copies. Then what if I wanted to have 8 keys? The number of copies becomes larger and larger. What if I wanted to have an entire piano? While it's not easy right now to see the advantages of clones, imagine having to do this for an entire piano. Clones could be very helpful. I'll go with clones now. I won't need these 2 copied sprites. I'll delete E, delete D, make sure my program stopped. I'll also rename this sprite now. I'll be copying it. I'll call it key. How do I want to organize and initialize this sprite and all the clone sprites? I'll go to my diagram. When the green flag is clicked, the sprite will create each of the key clones. The keys will be visible on the stage. The sprite will not be visible on the stage. How will the sprite tell each of the clones what its key value is? The sprite and the clones use finished creation to indicate when the sprite has finished creation. Before the sprite creates the clone, it sets finished creation to an N for no. When the clone is finished creating, the last block sets finished creation to a Y. The sprite will be blocked waiting for the finished creation to become a Y. The sprite will use the global variable key index to indicate which key is being created. This sprite will have my key index that is visible only to the sprite available for the sprite in each of the clones. Just as each sprite and clone have a position on the stage, each sprite and clone will have their own copy of my key index. Each clone is separate and unique from each other, including the sprite. That's a lot of words. I'll show what happens. When a green flag is clicked, key index is set to 1. Finished creation is set to N. And the clone is created. The first clone will get key index value of 1, save it in my key index. This value was initially set to 0. You'll see in the code earlier. Clones get copies of their values from their sprite. Taking the key index value of 1 from key index changes this to 1. It'll use this to determine which key it is. When it's finished, it sets finished creation to a Y. The sprite has been blocked waiting for finished creation to become a Y. Finished creation is now Y. It's finished initializing, and it'll be waiting for the key to be clicked on. Sprite now can wake up from waiting for finished creation being Y and can create the next key. Changes key index by 1. It's now the value of 2. Sets finished creation to an N. It'll create the clone, then immediately block waiting for finish creation to become the letter Y. My key index, again, has an initial value of 0, only a copy of what the sprite has. Notice the sprite is not setting my key index. Only the clones are setting their own variable. This clone sets my key index to key index, which is the value 2. 0 becomes 2. Sets finish creation to the letter Y. It's finished creating and now waiting for the key to be clicked on. The sprite wakes up from its wait and continues creating the next key. This will go on for as many keys as I want created. I'll go back to Scratch now and make these changes. First, I'll create the clones. I'll make some room. Go to Control. Create clone of myself. It creates the clone. I want when I start as a clone. Now when the clones are created, they'll properly initialize. I want to create 4 clones. Repeat. Change it to 4. So I'll have 4 keys. Now when I click on the green flag, clone will be created. The clone will set its direction, tempo, and costume. This will happen 3 more times, and I'll have 4 clones ready to play notes when they're clicked on. Where will the clones be created on the stage? I'll try it. Make sure it's stopped. Green flag. Looks like I have only the sprite. But all the clones have been created in the same place as the initial sprite. How can I get the key clones to be side by side? If the main key sprite moves each time it creates a sprite clone, each clone will be in a different place on the stage. I'll stop it. I'll move the sprite to a nice location on the stage. I want it to always start here. I'll go to Motion, go to XY. Now when the green flag is clicked, the sprite will always go to this location before it creates all the clones. The sprite still needs to change its position as it creates each clone. I only want to move to the right some. I'll get Change X. Increasing X moves to the right. But how far should I move to the right? What's the width of one of the keys? Go to Costumes. The costume is 91 by 55. I have a width of 55. Back to Scripts. I'll change X by 55. Move this down a little bit. I'll try it. Stop. Run. They're side by side now. It's a little tiny bit of a gap in between. I'll stop it. Try again. Make it 54. Run. A little tighter. I like that. It looks good, but there are 5 keys. I only want the 4 clone keys. How can I get the other sprite key off of the screen? I'll stop the program. Here's the sprite. How do I get it off of the stage? I'll go to Looks, Hide. Now this sprite will be hidden on the stage. If the sprite is hidden when it creates the clones, are the clones hidden? Clones inherit their state from the sprite that creates it. It gets its XY location on the stage, as I've shown. The clones will also get the visibility from the creating sprite. I'll run it. Make sure it's stopped. Green flag. Now none of them are visible. The keys were created, but they're all hiding. Stop. I'll add a show. I'll try it now. Stop. Run. This is looking nice. I have my 4 clone keys side by side. I'll play the keys. They're all playing the same note. How can I get each clone key to have the correct note, and what notes do I want to use? I want to use the white piano keys, which is the C major scale. Starting with middle C is 60, I'd want 62, 64, and 65. Most of these values are 2 apart, but one of them is 1 apart, the 64 and 65. Also, if later I add more keys, I'll have the same problem later on too. Since it's not a simple pattern of adding 1 all the time or adding 2 all the time, I'll use a list. I'll stop the program and create a list. Stop, go to Data, make a list. I'll call the list Keys for all sprites, okay. I'll create a new block to initialize the list. More blocks, make a block. I'll call it initialize list. Move it over here. I want to do this at the very beginning. Now when a green flag is clicked, initialize list will be called to initialize the list. Then my program will go back and create the sprites. I need to initialize the list. I'll go to Data. I want to make sure the list is empty before I try adding anything. I'll add. I want 4, so I'll duplicate, duplicate. I want numbers 60, 62, 64, and 65. How will the clones use these values? There are many ways. One way, I could have each clone take the first value from the list, use that key. Or another way, I could have the starting sprite set a value that specifies which index into the list to use. I'll go with the latter one, using an index, so I won't be destroying all this data. Another advantage of this approach is with more complicated programs, there could be a lot more data that I need to use to initialize, and deleting all of that can be very cumbersome. Each clone will get its unique index value into the keys list for the node it's supposed to play. The starting sprite needs to set the value, make a variable. I'll call it key index. Okay. The first clone should get key index value 1 for the first element in the list. After the clone is created, I need to change key index by 1. The next time, key index will be 2, 3, and 4. The second, third, and fourth clones will have 2, 3, and 4 as their index. The clones need a variable for themselves to hold their key value. Make another variable. Call it my key index for this sprite only. Now each sprite will have its own my key index. Okay. The clone needs to save the value when it starts. Set my key index to key index. Now when the program runs, key index is set to 1, creates the clone. 1 is saved for this clone. Key index is incremented to 2. Clone is created, it saves 2. Incremented to 3. Clone saves 3, incremented to 4. Clone saves 4. That should work nicely. I'm not happy with a repeat of 4 and having 4 things here. If I add more, the repeat won't be correct. Now what I really want to do is repeat for the number of items in the list. I'll get length of keys, use that instead. Now if I add more keys, more clones will be created. It's much better to use the length of keys rather than assuming what the length of keys is. I still have one problem. The starting sprite creates the clone. The clone saves key index, but how do I know the clone can save key index before the starting sprite changes it? I don't know how long it'll take to start the clone, which sprite will get to run, whether it's the clone sprite or the starting sprite. It's a race that the clone will copy key index before the starting sprite can change it. Almost all the time this will work, but it's by luck, not by design. These are the kind of problems that can cause a lot of headaches. I want a design that'll always work. It's so close to being correct already. Like I showed in my diagram, the starting sprite will set a variable value and wait for a different value from the clone. I'll create the variable, make a variable. I'll call it finished creation. Leave it for all sprites, okay. The starting sprite will set finished creation to an N for no. Move this down a little bit. Then I want this sprite to wait until creation is finished. Go to Control, wait until, operators, equal. I'll wait until it's a Y for yes. Get the variable, finished creation. Move it down again. Now when the starting sprite creates the clones, it'll set finished creation to an N, create the clone, then block, waiting for finished creation to be set to a Y. The clone initialization had better set it to a Y or this program will be stuck. I'll get set, put it at the very end, finish creation, set to a Y. When the clone finishes initializing, it'll let the starting sprite know it can go to the next clone. Have I got everything now? Any bugs? I'll try it. Stop. Start. The list looks good. 60, 62, 64, 65. I can remove the variables from the stage too. Now I have only the keys on the stage. They're side by side as I'd expect. I'll try them. Uh-oh. They're all playing the same note. Is this creation code wrong? Key index is 5. Start at 1. So key index did work its way up through 2, 3, 4, 5. Was the value not saved correctly? What happens when I click on the sprites? The sprite is clicked, changes its costume, plays note 60, then changes the costume back. All the sprites are playing 60. They're not playing the particular note that they're supposed to play. Which note should they play? Take a look at keys, get rid of key index. Keys are in the way over there, I'll move it over here. The first key should play 60. Second one should play 62, third 64, fourth 65. 1, 2, 3, 4, each is the index in the list. How do the clones know which index they have? They were saving it. They'll want to use my key index. How do they get that particular note out of the list? From item. I'll get item, my key index. I'll try this now. Stop the program, run it. I'll get keys out of the way. Try the keys now. I have my different notes. The keys are automatically placed on the stage, and the keys are playing the correct notes. Now I should be able to add more keys. What are the other keys I want to add? I'll go to Sound, Play Note. There's my middle C, the D, E, and F. I want G 67, 69, 71, 72. I'll add those to my list, duplicate, change the numbers, 67, 69, 71, 72. The repeat's already using the length of the list. This should work now. Stop the program, start it. I have an octave now of C major, hopefully. Try them. Very good. Notice how easy it was to add more keys. I only had to add a key into the list. I'm finished with this challenge. I encourage you to play with this program and get comfortable with clones, lists, and variables. Try changing the program. Try adding more piano keys. Try adding the ability for the player to adjust the volume level with the set volume block, change the tempo with the set tempo block, or set the instrument with the set instrument block. Or for a bigger challenge, try letting the player specify the duration, the beats, in the play note block based on where they click on the piano key to play the note. Perhaps when they click on the top half of the key, it plays for half a beat, 0.5, and when they click on the bottom half of the key, it plays for 1 full beat. But most importantly, have fun with the program. And keep in mind that we have one advantage that Beethoven didn't have. We don't have to worry about smudging the display. Oops. I guess the pixels weren't dry yet.